Greetings from the beautiful San Gabriel Valley in Southern California. Um, and today we're going to talk about a possible connection between Jeffrey Epstein and Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. Okay. Now, I'll be playing a video from Kim Iverson's channel and commentating on certain points that she makes that come up in the video. And this is super important because I'm sure most people who would come across this are familiar with who Nick Fuentes is. He's supposedly one of the leaders of the alt-right, right-wing patriot movement. Some people would say white nationalist. And the reason why I say this is important because the fact that people are looking up to this guy as a leader of the patriot movement or right-wing American nationalist, whatever you want to label it, is alarming, and it shows a severe lack of discernment among people. Well, there oftentimes people will throw out Fed jackets. Oh, this person's a Fed controlled opposition. But in this video, Kim Iverson brings up something that actually could be not hard evidence, but there's definitely smoke there. And you're going to see. And the reason why I say this is super important is because if you love America, if you're a patriot like I am, we want to win this country back from the communists, the Marxists, the liberals, and that includes the conservatives. They're part of that, right? You just want to return your country back into being a Christian republic, a sovereign Christian republic, free republic. And we see that America's free falling right now. And time is of the essence in this fight that we have for this nation. And patriots, pro-America, right-wing people, whatever you want, they have been lulled to sleep since 2016 by Donald Trump. And then many of them are they're following like Nick Fuentes as the leader. And so we're going to watch the video. I'll commentate on it. But Kim Iverson brings up a possible connection between Jeffrey Epstein and Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. And if it is true that there is a connection, it will make sense of the recent walking back of a lot of his talking points Nick Fuentes has done, and his weird, and the Groypers' weird cheerleading for Jeffrey Epstein that has caused him to lose a lot of credibility in the eyes of nationalists, patriots, right-wingers. I mean, Nick Fuentes has been on like a 1 to 2 month crash out, just being contrarian, virtue signaling for Israel, for Jews, for Jeffrey Epstein of all people. And why this is critical is because we don't have much time in terms of years of turning our country back, because we could be in a decade's time losing it forever. And if you have posterity, if you have children, grandchildren, and you care for them, even though you may be gone. If you're my age, I'm a Gen X, 51 years old, 52 almost, we're going to be gone in a few decades. But we're leaving this behind to our descendants. The more right-wingers, patriots follow people like Nick Fuentes, that obviously, if he's not a Fed, he is a wolf. He is a wolf. He is a snake. And the more we get behind people like him, people like Donald Trump, the more time goes by and we don't get active enough. And we don't start taking the bull by the horns and start making serious plans so that our country could return to what it was, and even better. Instead, we're just following these leaders that their very purpose is to steer the right wing to discredit them by how they behave and act, and to get them to be comfortable and rely on leaders and look for a savior from a politician or a Nick Fuentes type of guy. Let's watch. So hold on, I'm going to play this. I'll be jumping in with commentary.
The one bizarre connection that has come out from the Epstein files is Epstein's connection to the Groypers. Now, if you're familiar with the Groypers, they started on 4chan, and 4chan is a very influential corner of the internet, even if most people don't use it. It is a website that has been probably more influential than Facebook. And 4chan is where the Groypers got their start. Now, why this is interesting is because the Groypers, which is led by Nick Fuentes, is labeled anti-Semitic, anti-Jew, anti-Zionist. Nick Fuentes has been very much against Israel and the Zionists. And many people would label them as a hate group, hate speech. Nick Fuentes has been banned. He's been debanked. He's been deplatformed, all because of quote unquote anti-Semitism. So it's odd that there's now this link in the Epstein files between Jeffrey Epstein and 4chan, which later became the largest platform for the Groypers. I'm going to paint this picture for you. And then the big question about this is, why would Epstein do this? Why would he be the father of essentially a group that is labeled heavily anti-Semitic if Jeffrey Epstein was working for the state of Israel, if he was an asset of Mossad, or if Mossad was working for him or whatever. But nonetheless, if Jeffrey Epstein was very connected to the state of Israel, very caring about the fate of the state of Israel, why would he then be essentially the father of this heavily anti-Semitic, group, the Groypers? Now, I don't really know if I agree with them that they're anti-Semitic. Maybe, I haven't studied the Groypers enough to know. So I'm just, maybe they are, maybe they're not. Sorry, my cat is making an appearance, and she's, there's no more babies here at the house.
Again, and I just want to, she's using the word anti-Semitic, anti-Semitism. Again, if you watch this channel, there is no such thing as anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic. Those are categories made up by the Jewish Bolsheviks to gaslight Christians and Russians at the time for criticizing communism, which was headed by Jews. So even though she uses that term, I reject that term outright. There's no such thing. So let's continue.
House. If those of you that have been watching the show know that she had kittens, and they're all gone now. They've been rehomed, so she likes to hang out with me here in the studio. So you may see her from time to time. But she's out of here. She's like, "Oh, you're talking about them Groypers. I don't want anything to do with the Groypers." Or maybe she's mad because she is one. Okay. Anyway, back to where we are here. So how do we make this connection?
Whoa.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built a...
Between the Groypers and Jeffrey Epstein. So again, for those of you that don't understand what 4chan is, it's basically a forum. Chances are you've seen this Pepe the Frog. And there's a lot of similarities between the Groypers, which is a relatively new group, and 4chan or Channers. And the Groyper mascot is a derivative of Pepe the Frog, which originated on 4chan. And both groups, the modus operandi is to engage in anonymous, swarm-like coordination to troll their enemies and shape online discourse. That's kind of the idea of Channers and Groypers, is that they are an underground movement, sort of. They're kind of positioning themselves as like the silent majority, the things people are really thinking, but they're not able to actually put them out in the, in the mainstream because the views are just so extreme, but not really, because most people share them. They're just afraid to say it. That's kind of the idea behind it. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the emails. This is one of the email. This is from Boris Nikolic, and Boris Nikolic is a former advisor to Bill Gates. In fact, we spoke about him. His name came up when we were talking to Sayed G about Bill Gates and Epstein's coordination in creating pandemic response, which was weaponized against us during COVID. So this same guy comes up again in the Epstein files, but this time he basically sets up meetings between the founder of 4chan, which is Chris Poole, and Epstein. Boris sent Epstein a link to a Washington Post article from 2010 that was headlined 4chan users seize internet's power for mass disruptions. So he sends this to Epstein. And Boris writes in this email to Epstein, he says, this article describes why I find Moot interesting. And Moot is that's Christopher Poole. That's his nickname, I guess. So he says, this article describes why I find Moot interesting. The potential for manipulation is huge, is what he's saying to Epstein. So this is why Epstein is introduced to 4chan to begin with, because he's thinking, Boris is saying, this is a place where you can do some.
Okay, and 4chan, as you'll hear about this, was the birth of the Groypers. And like you said, if you're on X, you'll see the Groypers, their accounts, they always have that Pipit, the frog or whatever. And they swarm in defense of Nick Fuentes. So anybody on X that has some following and criticizes Nick or outright just goes hard on him, these Groypers will swarm that post. And and they basically toe the party line with whatever Nick says. So 4chan, again, the Groypers, they're an army of anonymous accounts, and they just toe the Nick Fuentes party line no matter what he says. And you'll be seeing that the latest trend with them is glorifying Jeffrey Epstein.
Some manipulation. What kind of manipulation? He doesn't say, but it's a place where things can be manipulated. So it's cool. You should take a look at it, right? So apparently, Poole and Epstein do end up meeting together, and they end up hitting it off. So much so that Jeffrey Epstein, after his meeting with Christopher Poole, the founder of 4chan, gives him a ride home even. He likes the kid so much. And at the time, he is a kid, in fact. This email reads, says here, F. So this is to Jeffrey Epstein from, doesn't say, but from somebody. It's redacted. F. Many good things still come through. I introduced Boris to Chris Poole and got them talking, encouraged Boris to get to know him. Boris said the two of you really hit it off. I'm hoping to come to New York. Email 12 of 16 or 17. Emailed Leslie about an apartment. Hope to see you one of these days. Okay. So they're saying that, okay, you guys really hit it off. And Epstein then says, yeah, the question from Boris says, how did you like Moot? And Jeffrey Epstein says, thanks. That was fun as always. I like your friends. And then Epstein apparently even gave him a ride home. He liked him so much. He says Epstein is, he calls him very bright and gives him a ride. This is from Jeffrey Epstein now to Boris again. He says, oh, I forgot, before Bill sits with Paul Jones and Glenn, we should talk with Melinda, Bill there. Eva, the mother of my goddaughter will also be there. And Boris replies back and says, how did you like Moot? He's very sensitive, so be gentle. Sure, I'll be there as well in 2 weeks or so. And then Jeffrey Epstein writes him back. These emails are so weird from Jeffrey Epstein. He's just like he doesn't know how to write or form sentences. And he writes back and says, I liked Moot a lot. I drove him home. He's very bright. So he liked him a lot, hits it off, even drives him home. Okay. That's the founder of 4chan. Now, this is before the Groypers are formed on 4chan, but just like right before, like the day before they're formed. And then suddenly
Okay, so a day before the Groypers are formed is this meeting with Epstein and Chris Poole, the founder of 4chan. And then the Groypers form right after. And that's The big smoke, that's the smoke. Like they say, where there's smoke, there's fire. That's the smoke that leads to a possible fire there, like the fire being the connection between Epstein and Fuentes and the Groypers. I mean, we already know that there are patsies. There are people that are selected as patsies to spearhead whatever it is, a movement, an organization, for a purpose that's not the purpose that they make it out to be. There's a reason why Nick Fuentes has risen in popularity, whether it's just being popular with the right wing or infamous. And lately, he's been on Tucker, he's been on Piers Morgan, he's made his rounds, he's been on a couple other shows with people, I think with Tim Pool. All of a sudden, where he wasn't getting any of these slots in mainstream and mainstream right-wing mainstream or conservative mainstream podcasts. Piers Morgan's more of a leftist, but isn't it funny now? All of a sudden, and his tune is changing on a lot of things now. But anyways, let's continue.
Groypers are formed. So we don't know what was discussed, during that meeting, obviously. But here is another email that came in, and this is from Boris to Jeffrey Epstein, and this is Thursday, October 20th of 2011. And he said, and the message body is last night and this morning in SF. Fun, also met some interesting people. There's a cool kid that you should meet, Christopher Poole. He's only 23. Read his bio. The rest of the day in Seattle meeting. Tomorrow morning for New York City. What's the plan with Woody? Have you tickets? Can't wait to see you, B. So what we know is what was going on from that time on 4chan is most of the influential portion of the site was launched. The politically incorrect or pull forum, this would go on to be the incubator for the Groyper movement and so much more. And it came out as the website's owner was meeting with Jeffrey Epstein. So that's the time that it was formed. So the meeting was just revealed from these latest files, but we found this video, and this is the co-founder of 4chan. It wasn't just Moot. There was another co-founder, and there was actually a team running it at first. But this guy's name is Bernard Goldsmith, and he went online by the moniker Martin Random. And this clip is from October of last year, and he's talking about Moot meeting with Epstein. So he's actually revealing something which wasn't known, a week or two ago. And this is what he says.
The instant we got on the map, I think we started getting compromised. And the best strategy is to just flood a platform with racial hate and cultivate that, especially on an open platform, right? So they have a playbook to fuck with us now. And it's not something that you can mass educate.
So this is the co-founder of 4chan. And remember, the day after the meeting of Chris Poole and Jeffrey Epstein was the launch of the Groypers. Chris Poole, the co-founder of 4chan, which is where the Groyper movement started. The day after him and Jeffrey Epstein meet, Groyper movement launched. This is the co-founder speaking now. What did he say? He said, basically, they got infiltrated. 4chan got infiltrated. And again, they flooded it with racial hate. Now, this is the thing. For those of us who are patriots and love our nation and want it to be what it once was and even better, a free Christian republic, a sovereign nation, disconnected from the United Nations, no foreign entanglements, Christianity as the religion of the country. Well, what better way to discredit the patriot movement by flooding it with racial hate, right? And again, it's easy to get caught up in it if you're not discerning. I even got caught up in it in some ways, in that that's the quickest way to discredit it. And for all these white nationalists, what they need to realize is we're not in Germany 1920s, where we do have different ethnicities here, and the fight should be for our nation to return to those things I said. And there are patriots that love their country that are Hispanic, even Black, and different ethnicities. So the quickest way to discredit, because they know, listen, they know that a racially hateful movement is not going to get steam in America. Again, we're not Germany 1920s. And listen, that was a different situation. I deny the Holocaust. I deny that the evil, the portrayal of that the Austrian painter was evil. I deny that because I've read Mein Kampf. He was fighting for his people, and he had every right to do so. Well, we're in a different situation. What is it? Almost 100 years later. 100 years later, we're not Germany. National Socialism is not for import. It is a Germanic thing. And a lot of right wingers are getting caught up in we got to be National Socialists or whatever. Then you have the Groyper movement come up, and they're just Nick Fuentes, all the outlandish things he says about other races. Well, what is it going to do? It's going to do exactly what Kim was saying. Well, what's the reason? Why would Jeffrey Epstein, being pro-Israel Zionist, get behind the Groypers and Fuentes? To discredit a serious America First movement that is America First, Christian, free republic, sovereign, by flooding it with racial hatred. Because if we're going to be a serious movement, we got to have serious views on things. And an irrational racial hatred, one, it's unbiblical, it's unchristian, but it's un-American. Because if we do the things that we need to do as a nation by protecting our borders and enforcing, immigration laws, namely to get rid of criminals and gang members that come here from other countries, whether it's Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras, Venezuela, and not let Muslims come to the country because they don't fit in with our culture, that will solve a lot of the issues. You don't have to get into a racial type of thing. But like this co-founder says, I think it was Goldsmith, this is his last name. He's telling you that they infiltrated and flooded 4chan with racial hatred. This is what the Jews do. It gives them justification for implementing hate speech laws.
People about. It's something that looks like a natural phenomenon, but it's really just a bunch of fucking insects in Israel, making racist shit happen, or people in India who are paid as part of a fascist organization to do that. Like, it's literally the way the site was destroyed and what chased me off of it, and turn it from what it is to what you remember. Right? You need to remember that these are dynamic entities. Right, starts with a bunch of us working together to get some shit together, right? And it took all of us.
Don't settle for less. Here's what others are doing to fix missing and broken teeth. The company everyone has been raving about is called Nuvia, with thousands of 5-star reviews and a 99.13% success rate to back it up. It's no wonder Nuvia is the clear choice.
Right, in ways that I've described, like the kid couldn't code it himself. Like he couldn't even fix basic compiler errors he was getting. So like he needed other people. Like, and that's the reason why I'm trying to like tell you, this is how this shit happens. Like, we're told these stories because it's useful to be able to like infiltrate an organization after you've created a head for it and just turn the head. Like, all you got to do is fly Christopher Poole out with Jeffrey Epstein, this fucking loser who has nothing going for him, right? Nothing. He's going to be, he didn't make that site. He didn't do anything afterwards. You can kind of see who did by what they did afterwards.
So he's talking about Chris Poole, that Chris Poole really didn't have the technical skills to make the site, to basically make the site. And that basically Jeffrey's Epstein's prints were all over it in terms of basically the intent of the site, what it became. Again, flooding it with racial hatred, like an anonymous army of what these call Groypers to sway right-wing opinion into a certain direction.
He tried to make stuff. He failed because he's a leech. He's a patsy. He had a bunch of forces uplifting him that he did not understand. And it was not to his benefit to understand them. And he made his identity based upon this. And now he can't get out.
Okay, so that was from last year, before all of these Epstein files have come out showing us that there was a connection between Epstein and Christopher Poole. And one thing that I have to show you here is the email I read to you showed that the meeting that that Jeffrey Epstein had with Christopher Poole was, that email that Boris sent to Jeffrey Epstein was dated Thursday, October 20th, saying, hey, I met this kid, you should meet him. And Jeffrey Epstein then says October 24th, we have the emails that he says, yeah, I drove the kid home, right? That was October 24th that he sent that email. So this meeting happened sometime between October 24th and October 20th when the original, hey, I know of a kid you should meet, was sent. So in that 4-day window, Epstein meets this kid, which is pretty quick to say, hey, I know somebody you should meet. And then within days, a couple of days, Epstein meets him. What's interesting is the politically incorrect kind of group that's on 4chan that ended up dominating 4chan was formed, you could see here, on October 23rd of 2011, which is in that window of Jeffrey Epstein meeting Christopher Poole, and suddenly this politically incorrect forum is created. So we obviously don't know, the founder of this says Christopher Poole Christopher Moot Poole for politically incorrect, but who was active on this forum? Who were the people posting on this forum? Bernard, the co-founder, we just watched that video, and he says, yeah, we were infiltrated from the day, we were infiltrated. And so were the people posting, creating this Groyper movement, actually agents or ops in some?
Yeah, something like the Groypers. Okay, so she mentioned this Boris guy, Nick Lake or whatever, told Epstein, hey, I got this guy, Moot, Chris Poole, the founder of 4chan. I got him. Brilliant kid, 21 years old, I think 23, or 21 to 23. And that's October 20th, 2011, October 24th. Epstein actually meets him. Or he confirms he met him. So he met him in between the 20th and 24th, this Chris Poole guy. And then 4chan launches. And right away, like this Bernard, I think Goldsmith, who also helped found 4chan, says they were already from day one infiltrated and flooded with racial hate. And when you look at a phenomenon like the Groypers, this is not natural. Again, these are anonymous accounts. They have this frog, Pepe the Frog character is their thing. And again, anything Nick does says 100%. Anybody who goes against it, they swarm and troll. And Nick Fuentes was probably the most influential podcaster in the right wing. And people were saying he should run for president. He's going to be the future leader of America. And as you're going to see in this upcoming video, he has walked back a lot of the talking points that he got popular for. And now him and his Groyper army are glorifying Jeffrey Epstein as this cool guy who had aura. And now they're mocking nationalists, white nationalists, other patriots. They're mocking them for being boring and dull and having no sense of humor and even Jeff Fuentes was like all about the Bad Bunny halftime performance. I mean, it's just bizarre. So let's continue watching.
some way? And were they working with Jeffrey Epstein or for Jeffrey Epstein, or was he working for them? But suddenly this movement pops up, and this is just right at the time that Jeffrey Epstein meets with the founder, and right at the time that he gets these emails of, hey, this group's interesting, they can be manipulated. And now suddenly we have this Groyper movement, which is heavily labeled as anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-Jew. Why would that, what would be the purpose of that? I think is the big question there. Now, one big reason to prop up groups like this is to delegitimize movements. If there's a genuine sentiment that's clearly rising that you're worried about, this is in 2011, where people are starting to say, why are we giving so much money to Israel? These questions are starting to pop up. Like, why? Maybe we should be more America first. Maybe we should focus on America more and not care about what's going on in these foreign countries. And you see this trend popping up and you're like, wait a minute, you know what? I don't want this. What you would do is you would create a group so extreme, so fringe, so out of the norm, so toxic and, just so like radioactive that anybody who shares even a sensible, similar viewpoint is labeled as part of this really fringe radioactive group. So it's a way to delegitimize movements. And this has been done with anti-war. This has been done.
Exactly. So that is very, very likely that the reason for the formation of 4chan, the Groyper movement, the rise of Nick Fuentes was to discredit any serious America First patriot movement. And I think that was one of the purposes of the rise of Donald Trump. Because now if you're a right-wing patriot, you're automatically connected to Donald Trump. Oh, you're a MAGA guy, you're a MAGA guy. Or if you're an alt-right, you're automatically connected with a Nick Fuentes. And it's to discredit serious patriots, serious Christians that want their country back, that want it to be a free Christian republic, sovereign nation, no foreign entanglements, no connection to the United Nations, free speech, the right to bear arms. And that is exactly why Nick Fuentes and Groypers would be useful to a Jeffrey Epstein, so that when there are serious people like myself to say, hey, we should not have any influence from Israel in our nation. We should not be giving them billions of dollars, funding their wars, fighting for their enemies for them. And we need to make this a Christian nation again, where Christ is king. Well, all of a sudden, what do they think of? Nick Fuentes and his Groyper army and all the racial hatred they spew and the outlandish things they say about women. They're total disrespect to women. And it discredits the movement as just a fringe, like, bottom feeder movement. Anyways.
With a variety of different movements where they're like, these people are look, oh, you're one of those people. I see how you are. Oh, okay. Yeah, great. And you get labeled with these terrible people and these terrible groups with these terrible, terrible labeling. And so it's a way to delegitimize an entire opinion, an entire way of thinking. So that could be one of the reasons why Epstein, maybe the motivation for creating this really highly anti-Semitic group, right? Or perhaps one thing to do is to also to kind of gather all of these people together on the internet, in the dark corners of the internet, bring them all together with one thought that you think is the thought and what they're agreeing on. And then you kind of do a bait and switch on them, which kind of looks like what's happening now, because Nick Fuentes has been anti-Israel. He's been, an anti-Zionist. And now suddenly what's really bizarre is that when it comes to the Epstein files, Nick Fuentes has been surprisingly defensive of Epstein. And also defensive of Steve Bannon. And a lot has come out about Steve Bannon in these files. Steve Bannon tried to rehabilitate Epstein's image, tried to create a documentary on the guy, was very friendly with Epstein. This is after he was accused, the first time, after he was convicted the first time. And Steve Bannon, it turns out, was a very good friend of Epstein's. And then, Steve Bannon was one of the masterminds behind the Trump campaign. And also Steve Bannon apparently was working with Ehud Barak on his campaign as well. So Steve Bannon is very much in this picture. And now here's Nick Fuentes, strangely, after being this big anti-Zionist and after being labeled the anti-Semite of the year and all of these things, here he is, strangely saying that Jeffrey Epstein was super cool. Watch this. This is a compilation.
Listen, let's just be very clear about one thing, and then I'm going to read super chats. They saw the power of 4chan. They saw the power of 8chan. They saw the power of right-wing Twitter.
Come back and move forward with Purdue Global at purdueglobal.edu.
Our bookstore is like a portal,
It's neo-Victorian, it's steampunk.
and we wanted our Wix website to be too.
So as Kim Iverson was saying, Nick, big Steve Bannon guy, Bannon connection to Epstein. Okay. And now all of a sudden, Nick is defending Jeffrey Epstein. Could it be because Epstein was the catalyst of getting the Groyper movement started? I don't know. Let's continue watching.
And they could not accept that it wasn't under their control. They bought it. They purchased it. They saw the power of right-wing Twitter and 4chan in 2016. Jeff Giza wrote a paper for NATO on mimetic warfare after he paid for the deplorable and MAGA 3X. Look up everything I just said in that sentence and understand. Listen,
Okay.
Let's just be very clear.
Sorry, that's not the compilation. That is Nick Fuentes saying he's talking about Moot's sale of 4chan. And he's deriding mainstream right-wing commentators. He's saying that basically 4chan was so powerful that it was bought so that it could be controlled by billionaires and mainstream MAGA. But here's Nick Fuentes now hyping up Jeffrey Epstein.
Epstein's my boy, dude. Let's just be honest. Epstein was cool as fuck. There, I said it. Here's the thing. Everybody would say, I would never go. Me, Epstein Island, I would never. And it's like, dude, you're telling me. Jeffrey Epstein was probably so cool. Like, he was probably the coldest, coolest guy you know. You're telling me the coolest guy you know who knows everybody says, hey, we're going to go on my private jet to my private island. We got hot girls. He doesn't tell you how old they are. How fucking lame would you be? Are they 18? Like, who's going to be the nerd that asks that? You probably would just assume they are. Or that it's in international waters, so it doesn't matter, but like, you're telling me you would automatically say, no, like, you don't know what's going on. All everybody knew is that he was the coolest guy in town. The coolest guy in town says, hey, I'm rich, private island, private jet, hot girls all week. Let's go. Great food. You're telling me you'd be like, are they, Jeffrey, are they all 18 though? You're telling me you would be the nerd that would ask that? You have the balls to say that?
So there he is basically defending.
Now, if anybody with halfway decent person, after hearing that out of Nick Fuentes' mouth, I mean, defending Jeffrey Epstein, saying he's not a PDF, you know what that means, a PDF file, and then saying he was the coolest guy, like he had aura. That's the whole, him and the Groypers thing. Oh, he had so much aura. He was the coolest guy. They're glorifying a sexual predator who preyed on young women, abused young women, sex trafficked. People were shocked at this. And like I said, Nick Fuentes was on this roll. He was knocking it out of the park. And then all of a sudden, I saw the change when he went on Tucker. Oh, I saw it when after Charlie Kirk's assassination. And I don't want to get too much into that right now. I'll do another video of the things that I saw right after Charlie Kirk's assassination. I said, this guy's going downhill. This guy is scared. Or both. It could be that this is just now. It's like what Kim said earlier. To make the switch, to make the turn. He was so-called leader of this right-wing movement, and now all of a sudden turning. Jeffrey Epstein, who universally by the right wing is despised and people want justice. Oh, he has R and he's the coolest guy. First of all, Jeffrey Epstein and cool shouldn't even be in the same sentence. The guy looks like a total weird basement freak. He doesn't even he's looks like a weird basement freak. Ara, what? Look at the guy. The guy's, this just goes to show you how Nick Fuentes is a creep and a weirdo. Nobody in the right mind would think that guy even looks cool. He looks like a dweeb. He looks like a weird geek at Jeffrey Epstein. He looks like a nerd, like a guy that got picked on. And Ara, these guys have low standards for what Ara is. Anyways, let's continue.
And he's not the only one. Here's another. This is a tweet that a Groyper posted saying, "I'm tired of pretending he didn't have aura." And this is a picture of Jeffrey Epstein. So the group is defending Epstein. This is where it gets really weird because the Groypers are known for being anti-Israel, anti-Zionist. And yet when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, suddenly they're all like, ooh, Jeffrey Epstein's the man. He's cool. He's got aura. It's very strange. So it is very, very weird. Here is another. This is another video of people hyping up Jeffrey Epstein.
What's your name? What's your name?
Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, I came in with a saw. Ooh, yeah, I came in with a saw. Bitch, I play red raw. Yeah, bitch, I play red raw. Yeah, I came in with a saw.
Strange, another hype video of Jeffrey Epstein. Look at this photograph and what Jeffrey Epstein is wearing. And
so those are Groypers making a promo video about how cool and how much aura Epstein had. And he remind you, these guys are supposed to be Catholics. Nick Fuentes and the Groypers are Roman Catholics. And they're glorifying a sexual predator, a PDF file. Amazing.
And now look at this photograph of what Nick Fuentes has been wearing on his show. In fact, he even started selling it. This is a USA quarter zip. Now, Jeffrey Epstein's has his initials on it, JEE. Nick Fuentes is wearing one that's USA, and he's selling one that says USA, but it's obviously inspired by Jeffrey Epstein. So this is just really kind of strange. And Fuentes is also hyping up Steve Bannon. And so these are the questions. We know Steve Bannon was close.
So Fuentes is now selling Jeffrey Epstein inspired merchandise. Can't make this stuff up, people. And when I watched this video of Kim Iverson, I got kind of I got chills because it's this whole thing was a fraud from the beginning. This whole America First, Nick Fuentes Groyper movement was a fraud from the beginning. It has all the telltale signs, and now the smoke that comes out of the connection between when 4chan started after the meeting with Jeffrey Epstein and Chris Poole, and then the Groyper movement starts right after that. It starts right the next day. Again, to discredit American nationalism, the patriots, and then to lead them down this road of America First and then make the turn to the point where you're now supporting a PDF file and glorifying him and how cool and how much R he had, selling his merchandise.
Close to Jeffrey Epstein. We know that Jeffrey Epstein met with the 4chan leader. We know that 4chan is where the Groyper movement started. And right at the time that Jeffrey Epstein met with the founder of 4chan is right at the time that the Groyper group, Politically Incorrect, starts on 4chan. And now you've got Nick Fuentes, who's like a notorious anti-Zionist, anti-Israel supporter, hyping Jeffrey Epstein and wearing and selling his merch. So the question is Epstein the father of the Groypers? And are they somehow protecting or fawning over him or hype? I mean, they're certainly hyping him and all of these things. And here's Nick Fuentes hyping up even Steve Bannon, which, is Steve Bannon connected to the group? Maybe Steve Bannon's Epstein's the father and Steve Bannon's like the manipulator. Because remember, they were saying, well, 4chan can be manipulated.
I think that I am a big Bannon supporter, actually. I've turned out to be one. For the record, I've not talked to him. I don't have any relationship with him. People say that we're working together. We're not. I've never spoken with the man. And in the past, we've actually had beef. However, Vance is a major critic of the little tech group, and I really like what he's been saying. He's been saying a lot of the right stuff about Trump, even about Israel for that matter. He's really turned on that because he was a big ZOA guy. Now he's putting the screws in Laura Loomer. So he's putting out a very different message than he was years ago. And I think that on the right, that is the message. I tell people when they infiltrate the GOP, I say Bannon's the model. It's funny you say that because I tell them that's about as far as you want to push it. And I tell people to push a respectable version of it. Trump, Bannon, that type of rhetoric is about what passes, and it gets the job done.
Do you think Bannon will run in the next election?
I hope so. I don't know, but I hope he does.
So it's all a little weird. It's all a little suspect. Just wanting to point this out, that there is a possibility that Jeffrey Epstein was essentially the father or the founder or the manipulator or the secret hand that was pulling the strings behind the Groypers. It's very bizarre timing, very bizarre, the whole thing is just really bizarre. And the big question is why? Why would he have started that? And again, one of the theories is, well, to delegitimize a rising movement. If you've got a lot of people now who are saying, hey, why are we giving money to Israel? Why are we this? Why are we that? And it's all it's anti-Israel sentiment, that it's better to control that than it is to fall victim of it. And if you could control it, the way you control it is by making the whole narrative so extreme and fringe that it's toxic and people want to stay away from it. It's totally radioactive. And that could be what the point was. But I almost don't feel like that was the point. There was some other point that I cannot quite wrap my mind around just yet. Maybe you can. A lot of you are a lot smarter than I am. So I love getting your emails. You can email me, kim@kimiverson.com, and tell me, why do you think, what would have been the goal here? Because this was in 2011. So this is before, the rise of Donald Trump and MAGA in 2015, 2016. So what would have been the reasoning for doing this? What would have been the point? But certainly there seems to be a strong connection. And then there's a connection with Nick Fuentes defending Epstein and making excuses for Epstein while being a fierce anti-Israel, anti-Zionist guy. Make it make sense. I would love to hear from you. Again, email me, Kim@KimIverson.
Okay, so there it is. Obviously, the Groyper movement started right after the founding of 4chan, the Groyper Politically Incorrect group, and that started right after Jeffrey Epstein's meeting with Chris Poole. And now all of a sudden, Nick Fuentes has made his full, heel turn. And he's all about the aura and the coolness of Jeffrey Epstein. Weird. Anyways, I'm going to have a part 2 to this where I'm going to give more of my thoughts. But hopefully this was enlightening. And we got to be patriots. We got to represent America and Christianity well, not hitch up to scumbags like Nick Fuentes. Anyways, bye.